Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, What's New in Ranorex Studio 9.4. My name is Jackie King, and I'm with the Ranorex team. Our host today is Jason Epstein, but apparently he's having some audio difficulties. He may jump in with us here in a minute, but if not, we're going to be demonstrating the new features in Ranorex Studio 9.4. And during our presentation, if you have any questions, you can use the Q&A panel. And we'll also have a separate Q&A section of our webinar at the end, time permitting. That Q&A panel is located usually in the upper right corner of your screen.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Welcome to the webinar.
Okay. Thanks very much. Technology, isn't it wonderful?
Love it. Love it.
Keeps us
Okay.
challenged and employed. All right. So thanks, Jackie, for jumping in there. That is what makes a team, right? So yes, I am Jason Epstein. I'm one of the product managers for Ranorex, as well as Beth Chauvin. She's also on this call. But we're excited about some of the new features for Ranorex and wanted to show them off to you. We thought a webinar would be a great way to do it. So we do have the Q&A panel, as Jackie was talking about, so you can enter your questions in there. And Josh Owen, who is our technical sales engineer, will be filtering and answering those throughout the presentation. So we'll have some time at the end, and we can do live questions as well. So reminder that the webinar is being recorded. So if anyone of your team was not able to make it today, you can share the link and with anyone else that you feel might get some value out of this. So. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Mubin's demonstration.
Great, thank you for the intro. Hi everyone, my name is Mubin. I'm an engineer with Ranorex for about 5+ years. And in this demonstration, we are going to look at the new features in Ranorex Studio 9.4. We'll start by looking at the Ranorex Robust Path and its self-healing properties. What I mean by this is if you have a test and it comes to a point where it cannot discover the object in the allotted time, 60, 90 seconds, typically in the past, the test would fail, generate a report. Now, if an object is not discovered, we fall back to the self-healing attributes, properties, rediscover the object, and then continue with the test. After that, we'll look at the new reporting features added to Jira from Ranorex. When you push your report to Jira, there are some new features we'll look at. Now, in this demonstration, it's really just one directional. All I can do is just talk and show these features as they get introduced. But if you have any questions, by all means, go ahead and post them to our Q&A panelists, and they'll be happy to respond. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to create a new solution via Wizard. We'll do a web test, but these features are not just limited to one technology. Self-healing will work for desktop as well as mobile, but I'm going to pick web. Also, the test that you create is not specifically just that technology. So you're not limited to just creating a web test, one for desktop, one for mobile. You can actually create a test across all three systems. You can have a few actions on your desktop applications, a few actions on your web, a few actions on your mobile. And what Ranorex will do is it'll cycle through the technology, bring it to the forefront, do the actions, bring the next one to the forefront, do the actions. Okay, I'll call my test new features. Makes sense. And if you go under additional options, you'll see that the project name inherits the solution name. So you can have multiple projects under one solution. If you want, you could call this, new features web, or if you do a project for new features desktop. The languages that Ranorex supports is .NET, C#, and VB. However, Ranorex is 100% codeless automation. You're not required to have a skill set in programming. Ranorex will write all the code behind the scenes. What you'll see is a graphical representation of that code in the action table with drop-down buttons and text boxes. So that's how you would manipulate code. So it's 100% codeless automation. We're going to target Internet Explorer, and I'm going to go to this website here. and have Ranorex open the browser for me. However, once I create this test in IE, I don't have to create it again for Firefox or Chrome or Edge. Once you create a browser test, it'll work across the other applications. So one test will work across all browsers without any additional work on your side. Click continue. Okay, we'll go ahead and add it to the whitelist. The whitelist is good in that that's the only process that Ranorex will communicate with. Ranorex will look at your operating system's process tree and shake hands with everything. By putting on the whitelist, we only target the application under test, and in a sense that cuts down on discovery time for the object. It might be in computer time, so you may not notice it, but over time it might add up to a couple of minutes here and there. Okay, we'll say continue and finish. What's going to happen now is it's going to open up my browser to that page, and then we'll go back to the Ranorex IDE and look at it in more detail. So we have some 3 panels right here in the front. 2 of the panels, or this one panel, has 2 views where you'll do most of your work. A good percentage of it will be developing different types of test cases and creating recordings. We're not going to dive into that aspect of it. We're going to go ahead and just create a test case and then come back and show how the self-healing properties work when an object fails. Okay. The other 2 panels is just your Project Explorer, basically just the project files in this view. And the view below that is a simplified view of this. We're only looking at the modules themselves. And those modules are these that Ranorex created during the solution wizard, the project wizard. It created an open browser, a closed browser. All I have to do now is just fill in the missing pieces. What is it I want to test? We won't go into the details on these modules, but keep in mind, it's good practice to create recording modules. They're important because let's say you have an application that requires you to log in. That takes about 4 or 5 actions. Well, if you have 100 test cases and you have a recording in each test case for those 4 or 5 actions, if a developer comes back and maybe introduces a button you have to interact with now, you are now going to have to update 100 test cases with this new action. What would be better is to have a login recording that is added to all 100 test cases as a reference. That way, if you need to make a change, you make a change in this one recording. Everywhere it's referenced reflects those changes, those updates. So recording modules are important. It's good practice to try to make them as often as you can for any steps that are repeatable. But we won't go into this. We can go into that another time. Let's go ahead and start with our recording. I'm going to double click on the recording one. Okay. It opens up the recording panel here, right, that you see at the top. However, if these are closed by any chance, go ahead and click the green folder to open up the suite and double click the recording one to get to the recording one view. Okay. This is the action table. Ranorex does all the actions behind the scenes. Your responsibility is only knowing how to use the mouse and keyboard, and that's it. And nowadays, kids who are 3 years old, I know a few that are better at using the mouse and keyboard than I am. So, but that's your responsibility on Ranorex. Just understand the mouse and keyboard. It'll create the action in this action table and the objects in the repository. Let's go ahead and click the record button. And you'll see a red dot follow my mouse around the screen. This red bounding box that shows next to the mouse is Ranorex letting you know what objects it's able to identify. First name, last name, these category objects. So let me go ahead and click on first name. So always wait for the red bounding box before you do your action. Okay, I'll click on last name. And for a moment, you'll see that hourglass. That hourglass is the fraction of time it takes Ranorex to take your click action and write it to the action table. Okay, we'll click gender, category, and add. What I want to do now is I want to validate that one person was added to this, to confirm that one person got added correctly to this table. and you do the validation from the Ranorex recorder. Now it's nice enough to show you what the last 4 actions are and a history. It keeps a history of all of them. But you can also see by looking at the spy icon what these actions were if you just want to go back and check what you're doing. If you ever make an accident and you click something you didn't mean to click, you can always go back and in real time edit that test, delete the action, uh, bring it back to the correct setting and continue by just going here, saying if I didn't want this add action, I could just delete it and then click maybe a different button. But let's go ahead and validate, and you do that by clicking the validate button here. Okay. It goes from red to purple, the bounding box, or the bar here, but you also the bounding box goes from red to purple as well. We'll click VIP count 1, and we're going to look at this path later because we really need to understand this path to understand how these self-healing property works with this new option. Okay. I can click retrieve screenshot just to show that starting at the DOM, traveling down the HTML tree, we get to this final tag, which is this VIP count label we're interested in. This label has a lot of attributes. In the overview panel, you can see all the attributes that are available for us to validate if we like. And we have access to these attributes as well in the advanced. I'm interested in overview and inner text. For anybody who does web testing, inner text almost 99% of the time will have your title, the object value. We'll say next. Ranorex always checks to see if the object exists, but in this case I want to check inner text as well, that it says VIP count 1. Click OK, and now I go back into recording mode. I'm just going to select clear, and at this point I can click the X button up here and close the browser, but remember when I went through the solution wizard, Ranorex did 2 things for me. It opened the browser and it closed the browser, so I just needed to fill in the missing pieces. So let me go ahead and stop the test. And now we'll go ahead and look at the actions. And you can see as I click on these actions, it highlights an object in the repository. And this object is what we're going to focus on next to get an understanding of how the RX path works, the Ranorex X path. Once we understand it, we can then understand how the self-healing properties work. So this action here, the mouse action, click left mouse button, targeted the first name. Then I typed into the first name. I did the same thing for last name, typed into it, selected gender, selected music, clicked add. Now, I think I mentioned at the beginning, Ranorex is 100% codeless. However, you do have access to the code, and it's a very nice feature in Ranorex that it's not entirely made for just the UI interface for testing the user interface. You can do back-end testing as well. After I click the add button, I may want to write some code, some custom code to dynamically query that SQL data table and verify did the information get added correctly. So this is where I could do front-end and back-end testing at the same time by adding a new coded action. Okay. But I won't do that in this demonstration, and it's not, again, it's not required. But if you wanted to go that path and do some back-end testing, the option is there. Okay. We validate and we cleared. Now, a nice thing about validate is in the report, you'll just get a true or false that the value passed. If you want to visually confirm that the object is presented like you expected, you can grab a screenshot of just that object as well. Okay. Whenever you click an action, it highlights a repository object. Just click and hold and drag and capture screenshot. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this test just to confirm that everything worked correctly. So I'm going to go back and close my Internet Explorer and then run the test. And it should run from start to finish. Now, when we run this test at the bottom, you'll see a progress panel showing you how long it takes to identify these objects. And you might see the default time where Ranorex allows it, there you go, 1 minute to find this object. Once it finds it, as soon as it finds it, it moves on to the next object. And it goes fairly quickly. The first action usually takes the longest because it has to read the HTML tree into memory. But once it has it, everything else goes fairly quickly. We'll expand details, and we see that we ran a perfect test from start to finish, as well as getting a screenshot of just that object. But what happens if a path to one of these object changes, and then we slide through the default time, and then the test would fail at some point, so it won't finish. But this new option that we're going to look at will allow you to continue the test even if it fails. Okay. But before we look at it, this object in play, let's understand the path to these objects. So if I click on, I use gender for this one because it's a little more broken out and better to see. Click Edit and Spy, and this will now let us show how this path is created. In this case, everything is red with an X, and not to be alarmed. That's just saying that right now, Ranorex is not able to identify a DOM. There's no browser open that has that page on. So let me go back and turn on, or go back to that page, and then we'll go back, not that one. Let's try this one. Okay, perfect. Now we'll go back to Ranorex Studio and refresh. Okay, everything is all green, and we can highlight to confirm that this element exists. Perfect, got it. Okay, so let's go back and examine this path. The full path to the object, when you go to the Browser Results tab, is starting at the DOM, and this is the full direction, all the left turns, the right turns, down to the input gender. And this object, if I click Retrieve Screenshot, is really this button. So this object that we see on the desktop or the web application is the leaf on this tree. So all of this is not important to us. Really, it's just this object that matters. And remember, it has a lot of attributes that we can anchor on. The path that Ranorex tries to create to this object is, and again, the path is all behind the scenes. Everything that Ranorex does from this point backwards is what Ranorex is doing behind the scenes. All we're really interested in is the final element that Ranorex discovers, which is this picture right here, which is that object on the page. So Ranorex uses a smart algorithm to try to create this path to the object in such a way that it tries to understand where developers might make changes. So if it happens, we can still discover the path, and you're not asked to go back and constantly update the test every time developers make updates. Ranorex creates this by starting at the DOM, the very high level, and then it put in a wildcard, a // It's saying that in the future, right now there's about 10 layers between this TD gender ID, this unique ID tag for TD gender or attribute value. It's saying right now there's about 10 layers from the top to that one that we're interested in. In the future, there may be 15 layers. Developers might put in more containers, more div tags to pretty up the page. Or they might remove div tags to simplify it more. So we don't know how many there are going to be. So go ahead and check as many as you need. Check all the relatives after the parent until you find one that has a child that matches this condition. Because gender is a unique ID. That's what the slash or the hashtag means. Okay. Here we have a direct parent-child relationship with the // And then again, we have the // but you may also see question marks. And that's just saying that Ranorex thinks in the future there may be 1, 2, 3 more relatives between table and input. So table, okay, so I did this right. There are 3 relatives, 1, 2, 3. So it's saying check as many relatives as you can, up to 3, until you find this input. You may find it after 1 or 2, but in the future, it thinks that there might be more. Now, in my case, I put 3 because that's how many that there are. There should be like, a bunch of these to confirm. to check more later on. But this is a fixed number. Uh, Ranorex, I think, just did // in this case, saying that in the future, it thinks the table object and the input value may have more relatives. So just go ahead and check them all until you find this. And this is what we're interested in. Everything else, like I said, Ranorex does behind the scenes. Now, if we try to go back and say, let's say the developers change this TD tag, and instead of gender, let's say it's called type now, or let's go backwards. Let's say when I created this path, it picked type, okay? But now things have changed. If I hit enter, the developers came back and they created a new path for me, and they called it gender. So you can see right now, Ranorex was not able to find any elements. If I go to the path editor, it'll say, well, I found the DOM because that's part of my path. I found all the relatives underneath there, but this is where I'm failing, the type. And you can see the fail right here. It's not finding it. With the new self-healing properties, Ranorex can now go back and reevaluate a different path that's even more flexible to the object so that if it's not able to find it the first time, we can go back, rediscover it, and continue with the test. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to click cancel because I don't want to save the type. We'll keep it, make it go back to gender because that's the one that will work, and that's the one we need to fix. Okay, so let me go back to Excel, close this. And in order to do the Ranorex XPath, actually, let's go ahead and run this. I'll make this type. Let's go back and edit this one more time, make it the word type, and we'll see what happens in the test when it does fail. So I'm going to go up here, make a type, and we'll see what happens when we run this test. Okay, we'll run it. I think I closed the browser, looks like it, and run. Now when we click the run button, Ranorex actually builds an executable file, and it's really this executable file that's running your test. You don't have to have Ranorex installed and open to run the test. You don't need to install it on your target machine to run these tests. It's the executable that's doing all the work. Okay, so we found the first name, last name, and now we're searching for gender. And as you see in the progress panel, we have a default time of 1 minute, and we'll look at why it's 1 minute in a little bit. But we're going to search through this whole time. With the self-healing properties, it will search up to half the time that is denoted. And if it can't find it in that amount of time, it will try the new values. Right now, we don't have the self-healing attributes set, options set. By default, it's turned off. We have to go in and turn it on at the beginning. And once you set it the first time in Ranorex Studio, it will remember it each time after that. Okay, if you have any questions, by all means, our panelists are happy to answer those. Okay, looks like it failed. Yep, definitely failed, as you can see in that command line, which is what you'll see in the report as well. So if you scroll down, nice thing about Ranorex is whenever a test fails, it will always take a screenshot at the time of failure. So you can see what your application looked like visually and try to understand, visually what you think went wrong rather than trying to understand the error message that Ranorex provides. The error message is pretty descriptive and gives you good detail as to where the problem is. In this case, it's pretty simple. Couldn't find an element on the path that Ranorex created the first time. Remember, I changed from gender to type. So the object was not found. It tried 953 times. The reason for this 953 is, and the 1 minute default wait time, is that you may have a page where maybe you put in an account number and you have to wait for the page to load properly. There's could be thousands of data points and it takes a while for your SQL query to pull back just what you need to display. That might take 45 seconds. So this allows Ranorex to wait up to that time till the object is fully loaded, and in that last 15 seconds, it's still going to, find the object in fractions of a second. As soon as it finds it, it'll do the action and move on. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at this issue. How can we resolve it? We can resolve it by going directly to the item. You could have hundreds of actions in your recording, and you don't want to hunt and peck and try to figure out, which action it was that failed. Just go to the report, put your mouse over the failed action, and you'll get a notification that pops up. Just click jump to item, and this is the one that's highlighted right here, as you can see. And it highlights the object in the repository. And we know that the path is wrong. If we click edit and spy, actually you won't see it because we had teardown set up in our test suite, so the application closed. But what you would see is 2 greens and a lot of red. So now that we have this in the background, let's now go back and look at how the self-healing option works. So we'll close that. Now to do the self-healing option, just go ahead to your settings. Now this will do it locally to this recording, but if you go to the upper top part of the main toolbar and click open settings, this is your global settings. Go to advanced. Under expert settings, you'll see an option right up here, default Ranorex XPath. Click this and select robust Ranorex XPath, this new value. Apply, OK. Go ahead and click OK. Now it will not update any new objects we already have. We have to look at, we have to recreate all of this test. But before I do that, let me just close this quick launch or quick tutorial getting you started. I want to look at these this object's properties. So if I right click and go to properties, you can see that in here we have the absolute path, and this absolute path is the child layer plus the parent layer, so it's a combination. And that combination is important because at each layer we're going to search 30 seconds. So at this application start under test, we search 30 seconds. For gender, we search 30 seconds plus we inherit the search time for the layer above it. So that's where the 1 minute comes from. If I had another layer below this, it would be 30 plus 30 plus 30. And you can see that here. Here is the 30 seconds for the gender object plus a cumulative effective timeout of 1 minute, which also adds the 30 seconds of its parent. And now we have a new option called robust path. Before turning it on, this doesn't show. So once I turn it on, you'll have a robust path option. And right now there's no value because it needs to get created at the time you create the test, the object itself, when you add it to the action table. Once it's added to the repository and I re-record, Ranorex is going to say, oh, you already have an object here. I really don't need to do anything in way of updating it to continue. I'll just use the objects we have. So let's go ahead and recreate this test. I'm going to delete all of my actions. Okay. When I delete all of my actions, I need to delete my repository objects also. But rather than selecting and deleting all, I'm going to use the cleanup button here, and that will check all my recordings and see which objects are being used elsewhere. Because if these objects are being used anywhere else in any of these other recordings, I don't want to delete them, otherwise the test will fail. So these are all checked because obviously I don't need to use any of them. So let's say OK. And just this one object. I do need this because this is what the open browser is using. It's using that object to open the browser. Okay, so let's go ahead and re-record. I guess before I record, I need to open the browser one more time and then go to that web page. Now we'll go back to Ranorex Studio and re-record. Okay, and now we have the options set for robust Ranorex XPath. We'll wait for the red bounding box. Just takes a second because it has to read the HTML tree. But keep in mind, always wait for the red bounding box before you click on an object. That way you can confirm that you found it all the way down to its final element. And as I do this, I could have used the tab key as well. The tab gets recorded like any other action. But if the developers come back and add a middle name field in here now, and if I use the tab, it'll go from first name to middle name and type in my last name. So good practice is to always bring the object to focus first before clicking on it. Click on Mail, click Music, and Add. Okay, we'll go ahead and validate. We'll just go through all the steps we did before. Select it. Okay, we'll say OK. And we'll enter text because we want to validate that to say VIP count 1. OK. And then finally clear. And again, we don't need to exit. Ranorex did that for us at the beginning through the solution wizard. So we'll just stop the test and look now at the path that gets created. So if I click on any one of these actions, or not the actions, but the repositories themselves, you'll see now a robust path that we have here. And what this is again, if this path does not work, Ranorex creates a more robust path to the object so that it can rediscover it in a different way, a better way, and then continue with your recording. So let's take a look at this really quickly. We're going to, instead of doing gender this time, I'm going to change the music. Right now it says categories, or just category, but because there's so many options in there, maybe it should be plural. I bet you that if I made this website, I would have called it categories. It only makes sense to me. So we'll click Edit and Spy. Okay, I'll just go to this one, and I can change it to categories here, or I could change it up there if I want. So actually, a better way to do this is not doing it through the, let me just change it. You can also edit. I've showed you the spy earlier with gender, but another way to edit this path is just by clicking on it. Once you get comfortable and understanding the path, you can just click and edit it this way. Okay, I'll call it categories, hit enter. And now you can see in my absolute path, it now says category. You know, probably need to stretch it way out here. Okay, so it now says category. Okay, but my robust path still says the old one. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it and see what happens. Now, the robust path did other things as well. It was more of a direct path. There were other layers in um, the category object, but the robust path had a more fluid way to get to the object so that there are no layers that might impede it. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll run this test one more time. Let's just make sure the browser is closed. Okay, and let's run this test. Now it should fail, but the test won't fail. The object will stop looking using the original path after about 30 seconds and then fall back to the robust path or the self-healing path. Actually, before this, I meant to show something about the reporting as well, but we'll look at that after this. Okay, so we find everything we want, and now we're looking for categories, and it can't seem to find it. So we have a minute to wait, but Ranorex is only going to wait 30 seconds and say at that point, let's fall back to the robust path. Okay, again, if you have any questions, by all means, our Q&A panelists will be happy to answer those. Okay, and then we fell back using the robust path, and we still continue with the test and finish. And you can see it's successful. If we look and expand, again, everything worked as expected. In this case, I didn't have a screenshot, but validation did work, and we completed the test, even though we had a path that was not available the second time around. Now that I have this, one thing I wanted to look at before, because the next thing we're going to look at is reporting in Jira. At the test suite level, if you right click and go to properties, in the reports tab, there are many things you can do here. You can always send your report to a specific location. By default, it creates a reports folder wherever the executable resides and stores everything in there. So if you put your executable on the desktop of a target machine, it'll create a folder on the desktop for all the report information. This is just a timestamp, default timestamp, but you could write whatever you'd like. You could call it, my reports.rxlog, or if you want, you could change it. If you have users that don't have the Ranorex viewer on their machine, you can change the extension from rxlog to HTML and have them open in a browser. You can also change it to a PDF file, but that's done a little differently than just updating the extension. But we can come back to that another time with another webinar. I'm also interested in video reporting. I want Ranorex to create a video link of every test case. Maybe I run these test cases after hours, and the next morning, Ranorex can also email you the reports. The next morning, I'll just look at the report, click on a link, and watch the test cases at my leisure. One nice thing is the failed test cases. If you don't want to look at all the test cases, maybe just report the ones that failed. This now allows you to open up a communication bridge with your developers and say, hey, listen, I've been running this test and it keeps failing here. I have a video. Have a look, see what you think. So it's a nice feature, the video report. And I believe right now it's only available with Ranorex Studio. Apply OK. And now if I run this test, this time let me run the test with the correct value here so we don't waste time going through it. Category. And we'll just look at the record button as well, or the recording link. Click run. And then once this finishes, we'll now target Jira and look at Jira reporting. Okay, perfect. So now you can see we have a link for watching the video. Just by clicking on it, we'll watch the video. We won't watch the whole thing, but you can see now it is about 12 seconds. And if you want, you can watch the whole thing. It's not too bad. But that's the nice thing with the reporting. Now we can push the video to Jira as well. Okay, it's over. We'll close it. And let's go ahead and introduce Jira. To do that, we need to first go to Tools, Jira Integration, and Start Jira Wizard. So I'll click on it. Okay. Mine is already set up, but if I go to Switch Account, just go ahead and add the information, the API token that Jira will create for you. Sign in and continue. Okay. I'm going to send it to, I guess, RX Examples, or we'll do RX Jira. I like that one. Click continue. Okay. Now we have two ways of handling the issue: manual issue handling and automatic. For this one, we're going to set it up as manual, and the benefits of manual are, especially if you're creating the test for the first time, it's not actually in production yet to test the actual environment. You may not want to push the reports up to Jira, so you put it in manual and verify if the report, and maybe just test it one time, maybe not all the time, just test it once or twice. So you do it in manual, you'll have a link in your report to click and send to Jira. Another nice thing about manual issue handling is you can verify the issue first and make sure that it is application related and not user related. It could be that maybe you made a typo in the test, and because of that, it failed. So you don't want to show that the error was a user error and not actually the application error. So that's the feature behind manual, and then we'll come back and we'll look at automatic. Okay, my task is going to be, in this case, I'll make it a bug. Continue. We're not going to turn on automatic. We'll leave that and come back to it later. And then finally, you just have to fill in some missing required fields, and in this case, it's reporters. So click on this and add your reporter name, the username right there, or any other name that might tie in with your Jira account. Some optional fields. If you don't see a field on here that you need to target, you can edit this JSON file manually by clicking the edit button and then going in here and adding your field in manually so that it gets pushed up to Jira. Now that we have everything, let's go ahead and save it all. And we're going to run this test, but this time we're going to let the test fail with validation. Okay, so we have a report of it. We're going to run the test. And now we should get a link in our report asking to push it to Jira. Okay, validation will fail, and then we'll end the test. Okay, and here we go. So we still have the play video if we want to go back and look as to why the test failed. But now we have a link to create the issue, and that issue is the validation failed. You can see it's a very descriptive message, does not match specified value. Actual was 1, expected was 0. Okay. And to correct this, you can just jump to item. But if I click on this, it should open up on my other monitor naturally. Okay, it's on my other web browser. So there it is. This is the test that I just created that got pushed to Jira. Now I'm not going to click create. I'll just leave it alone for now and close it. Let's now go back and look at Jira using the automatic option and watching the video and everything get pushed up to the as reporting artifacts. So we'll close this. We'll go back to, now if this is closed, you can always just go to the tools and Jira integration and configuration, configure integration if you're already set up. Or if you want, you can also double click and the solution folder, the Jira JSD file. We're going to turn off manual issue handling and go to automatic. Okay, again, open state backlog, that's fine. Close state, upload the video and add a file. So I'm going to click on this and say I'm interested in my project. So it's in my documents folder. If I go down to Ranorex Studio projects, new features, since it's by date order, features, bin, debug, and I want my reports. So it'll go in here and just click my report Rx log, open. So that's what I'm going to push each and every time to Jira. Again, you need the report reporter as well, so do the same thing for the automatic and any other optional fields that you might want. I'm going to turn it on, go back and just ensure my manual is turned off. Now if you can have them both on as well, but we're just going to keep manual off and keep automatic on. We'll save everything and let's just ensure that the browser is closed and run it one more time. And this time it should automatically send to Jira. What you'll be provided in the report is just a link to click. Okay, perfect. So the test failed as expected. Didn't make any changes. And now, as you can see, it's closing browser, issue not found, new issue with ID will be created, and perfect. So we ended the test. We do have the play video, but this time we don't have the link to Jira. If we scroll to the bottom, get past our error, we can see down here after teardown, we created a new Jira issue. And this is the link to that test and its ID. So let's go ahead and click Ranorex test case, or test case. I guess I should have given it a better name. But now I have this one right here, Jira 4. If I click on it, you can see right here we have each field of the report is added all the way down to the bottom where we do validation, and we had an error. Actual was 1, expected was 0. If we continue down, we'll go to the attachments themselves, the log file, the video that you can watch, and every screen capture that we did. And this screen capture in this case is related to the error message. If we had an action to capture a screen, that would be added as well. And there you have it from start to finish using Jira. So the two things that we looked at was first the Ranorex robust path option for self-healing. And remember, by default, it's not turned on, so you'll have to do it yourself. Once you do it, it should stick. The second now is reporting to Jira, the report itself, the video, and using both the manual and the automatic. That's it for the demonstration part of it. Again, if you have any questions for Q&A, they'll be happy to answer those. Again, thank you, and we'll see you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Mubin. It was a great great demonstration. Really highlighted the new features that have been going on. So I'm going to toss it over to Josh to see if he wants to answer any of the questions that came in. We had some great questions that came through. Just making sure that everyone can still hear me.
Yes, Jason, we hear you, and again, thanks, Mubin. Happy to cover a couple of questions here, and a lot of these actually kind of all relate. So I'll just give another brief explanation about these path changes. So a full qualified path, or an exact path, would specify every layer in object recognition, starting from the parent, however many things in the middle, until the object is identified that you're looking for. A robust path attempts to define only the first starting option or object and only the ending option or object, not caring at all what's in between. It could be 1 layer, it could be 50 layers. That can take a little longer in search time, but is the most robust, because any of those layers change, then Ranorex will still be able to find that object. In relation to, when you're still going to need some maintenance, if something in the middle there changes that might be in your standard path, the robust path will then be used and fall back to. It's not going to update anything else in your project. It's just going to look for this robust path and try it there. If it still can't find it, it will fail. If it still can't find it, it's very likely that either the first parent object or the object at the very bottom, the one you're actually looking for, have changed. For example, if you've got a checkbox or a radio button that switches to a drop down, then you're going to have to do some maintenance and change that actual object definition. But the robustness, the idea is that anything in between all those layers, you're not having to worry about in maintenance. And this applies to desktop, web, and mobile. There is no technology exclusion here. Mubin chose to do web today, but you could do this, or this is going to work for any technology. Now, the robust path gets saved when you're editing or creating objects, so it doesn't automatically update your entire repository. But if you do any edits, or if you're recording or creating any new objects, whether it's through tracking, instant tracking, drag and drop, or recording, all of those being edited moving forward, we'll get the robust path saved. There was a good idea, I'm sure Beth and Jason have taken note about, adding something to maintenance mode about including or updating robust paths. That would give you a way to populate these things much easier for larger projects that already exist. Let me take a quick look through the questions coming in to see if I can address anything else. So during the execution, or when we're capturing these paths, there's no change to the repository file just by executing your test. Now, again, an edit or a creation of an object is going to update that object definition, but there's nothing special that you're going to have to worry about if you're using source control. So the question about get, these are like standard repository file updates. So the repository may update if you have edited or created something new, in which case you would update your source. Okay, let's see, what else do we have here? The robust feature. Okay, all of these are kind of related there. I think hopefully my explanation of the robust path, that fallback, will suffice. Now, like I said, it still can cause some maintenance or still require some maintenance if your actual object changes. There's a couple of comments in here about cached path or absolute path. Those don't update if it falls back to the robust path. So it's just kind of relying on that most robust part. So it's not going to change the defined path you might see in the editor. All right, lots of good comments. Thanks to Mubin. There isn't an indication that the robust path was used, but that is yet another piece that we can take a look and see if there's a benefit or maybe some sort of a maintenance mode piece, to warn about what objects could use a little TLC. What is the difference between repository cache and robust path? Yeah, again, the differences are all absolute, kind of being the fully qualified path, where your robust path is skipping as many layers in between, and you're just going to be able to save both of these at the same time now, falling back to robust rather than trying to go in there and edit it in the first place. Customizing the attachments items in Jira. Let's see, to an extent. Let me take down your email address. I might have to follow up on that one because I'm not 100% sure on how much customization you're trying to do there. It's really, that the answer is going to be depends, right? I will get back to you on that one. Okay. Very good. Yeah, the original XPath not updated, and just a general update for everyone because I'm getting some other questions here. Ranorex is .NET based, so it's going to work in a Windows operating system, but yes, we do automate iOS. Very good. I still have a number of kind of very specific questions in here. We are kind of at time, so please reach out to your account managers or even support for any follow-up questions on these new features. I'll turn it back over to Jason for some final comments here.
Yeah, if you have questions that didn't get answered, feel free to email address put up there to email them to evaluation@ranorex.com. If you are new to Ranorex, let me go back a slide here. Feel free to go to our website, ranorex.com, and download a free trial. It's a fully functioning free trial. You can try it out and see if it would be a good fit for your organization. And if you have not done so yet, and the new latest version is out there as well to upgrade from, but you should be seeing that in your Splash welcome screens when you start Ranorex. So that's all set too. Thanks again for everyone's participation today, and we hope you have a great day.